Thank you everyone for your patience and generosity of time and interest and participation in real time online around the world. And thank you for your patience for every single one of you here for waiting for us to adjust the sound, really. So maybe we should start gently and that would be good if you can. So today we are going to talk about, obviously, balance and how we can embrace balance, navigating through our needs and boundaries, and also embracing kindness and love and space of sharing. So let's start with that. So just a quick overview before, maybe one slide back. Just to have this notion of what is Ghatika today all about. It's about mental health and also mental illness. We will talk about a little bit of distinction between the two. Also the difference between stress and burnout, the two words and experiences I'm afraid that many of us are familiar with. And also what do we mean by resilience, boundaries, and embracing balance. So that's where we are at, and I hope you can hear me well. So now in terms of our safety and intention that I always mention, which is the next slide, I would just like to emphasize that this topic can be sensitive, it can cause us some unease. So please look after yourself while we are in dialogue and in participation. If you have any question or you would like to clarify something, please interrupt me and we can talk. Or if you need to, do whatever you need to do during this teaching, please do so. And now, after all this waiting and let's just pause for a moment and clarify our intention, why we are here today, what would we like to bring, and what is our motivation for participating and being together. Thank you. So if we can go to that beautiful photo. This is a photo that I took last year when I was working with my dear friend Pamela from Crystal. And we were taking photos, and I wish to share this with you. And I also wish to read a few verses from a prominent Australian poet, Alec Hope. I'm not going to read the whole poem, it's rather long, but if this poem is resonating with you, then you might actually do the rest of the poem in your own time. For every bird, there is last migration. Once more, the cooling year kindles her heart. With the warm passage to summer station, love pricks the course in lights across the chart. Year after year, a speck on the map, divided by a whole hemisphere, summons her to come. Season after season, sure and safely guided, going away, she's also coming home. And being home, memories become a passion, with which she feeds her brood and strews her nest, aware of ghosts that haunt the heart possession, and exiled love mourning within the breast. The sands are green with the mirage of valleys. The palm tree casts a shadow, not its own, down the long archetype of temple or palace. blows a cool air from moorland scrap of stone. And day by day, the whisper of love grows stronger, the delicate voice more urgent with despair, custom and fear constraining her no longer, drives her at last on the vast leagues of air. So here we are. So let's now set the tone for the next slide, which is what is about mental health. That is important to us. So I choose the World Health Organization definition that is from 2 years ago, and it's talking about a state of well-being in which individual realizes their own abilities. They can cope with the normal stresses of life, and they can work productively and fruitfully, and they're able to make a contribution to their community. So it really encompasses everything in terms of our individual family life and professional life. And that also, we all have mental health problems within a scale or spectrum or slide, if you wish, of our mental health. And there is a common that, that we have health complaints that may cause distress. They can interfere with our enjoyment of life. And there are times, of course, we all feel down and tense and angry and being anxious as a symptom of a mental health problem. But I would like just to remind us, it's not that I'm saying you something, telling something that you don't know. It's just the emphasis on mental health and later on, not yet mental illness and maybe disorder. And what is this all about? Because we are all kind of tending to go online and diagnose ourselves or recognize something and then wondering. So we all have our ups and downs and understandable reactions on a different situation and social problems. But that's if it's not too severe or long lasting, it can actually be very severe. But if it's not long lasting, that doesn't mean that we have illness or that we have serious problem. So then maybe to move on the illness slide. So this is where I would like to just spend a little bit more time in terms of range of specific conditions which affect a person's thoughts, feelings, actions, and mental functioning. And usually more severe and longer lasting than mental health problems that I just mentioned a second ago. So also it's usually different types. And when we talk about different types, then we're talking about categorization and clinical work and DSM-5 or diagnostic criteria for the disorder. And what is really important that we can go and recognize some symptoms, but there's so many circumstances and factors included that we then can talk about disorder. And it's definitely important to consult somebody who is trained in the discipline. And also from different spiritual learning and perspective, disorder is definitely a problem, which I'm going to give you examples, but it can be a symptom. If you look from the Buddhist perspective of training the mind, disorder is not something that it's permanent or sealed. It's something that we can heal. Sometimes we need medications to help us in the first phase or second or third, but just having a disorder and having medication, it's not going to help. That's what's been shown in research, but also especially in therapeutic practice, in clinical practice. So what is important really to understand, it's how are we reacting and responding to certain stimuli, what are our weaknesses and strengths, because there is a difference between post-traumatic stress that can last, a month and be very intense and debilitating, And there is a huge difference between that as a reaction or a response to the disaster, car accident, fire, or what we have, flooding, or to have actually post-traumatic stress disorder. And the similar thing with people who train their mind, and I know that Dharma brothers and sisters and friends in community who are experiencing, practicing and observing their mind, they probably witness within themselves a lot of difficulties. That doesn't mean that they have a disorder or illness. But also this is not anything to diminish a problem of illness. So it's kind of a sliding scale of understanding, monitoring, being aware, and consulting people who are trained in discipline to help us. And there are people who can have it's not really frequent, but people might have a psychotic episode, very intense one of month, completely be not being able to look after themselves, and they may recover and never develop any illness. And it can be other way around, that people don't have any big upheavals and gradually kind of invisibly, if you wish, develops illness. So it depends on a lot of factors, which is our predisposition, quality of our life and health. As I said, usually I use an example, there are 3 people in a vehicle, go down the road and there is a car accident. And one of them is severely traumatized. None of them is physically injured, and 2 of them are fine. What are the reasons that this one person is so affected? It's everything what they brought with them that day in that car. Did they have a good relationship at home? Did they have maybe a problem of any other health issues? Maybe this is the 5th accident for them, and it was one that is too much. So all these factors. And just one more thing in terms of after the COVID, this is obviously during a pandemic that every 4th person in the United States suffers from symptoms of mental illness. That every 3rd person, according to Australian Statistic Bureau and research, every 3rd person in Australia suffers from depression, and it was before pandemic every 4th. And there is a study from 2024 in February, collaboration between University of Queensland and Howard University across 119 countries looking into mental health, and saying that every 2nd person is vulnerable to develop mental health from now until age of 75 in those countries. So basically, we are sensitive, we are tired, and as communities globally. So gentle care and understanding is very important. Thank you. So I would like to talk a little bit about this, if you on the table, yeah. If you have any question, please, you can maybe check in chat. I don't know if there are any questions there. Not at the moment. Or maybe here in the room. Very important topic about stress and burnout. And again, many of you are very familiar with this, but just to remind us and maybe introduce something important or remind again about importance. So what about stress? When we're under the stress, and I'm not saying that it's healthy, but actually sometimes it can be, just sometimes. So I'm very careful with wording, because not every stress is damaging. But over-engaged in stress, it's something that, you can see that person is exceptionally dynamic and intense encounter, whatever the tasks are, caring of family, work, maybe study, or maybe all the above. And what actually happens, how we can see if we monitor our own mind and behavior, and also other people, that people are overreactive. So, when you have somebody that is becoming suddenly oversensitive or is just snapping and it's not typical behavior, then it doesn't have to be, but usually a person is under the stress. And how is this different from burnout? When person suffers burnout, there is complete disengagement. There is kind of numbness and emotions are blunted. It's almost like a person is in front of you, but it's not reachable. And they don't read, they don't communicate. There is that beautiful saying that has nothing to do with the romance here, but it says, she was an open book and he was illiterate. And this can be combined here that you are telling person, communicating with person, you're very transparent with person, but person might actually not to hear you, or they can even hear you that Paul Ekman is talking about refractory period. I always like to remind of that. So when we are upset or we are disengaged or we are numb, then we might hear what is feeding our anguish. Or so we are filtering to the prisms of, but it's also very important how we communicate and then how we listen. So refractory, if you are angry, it's better not to talk too much. As Lama Alan says, maybe and Shantideva, to be like a piece of wood and wait. Rather than filtering through your upset and already, story, narrative that is there. Stress produces sense of urgency, and it's always about hyperactivity, multitasking, many things. So maybe one task that is quite intense and demanding, and that it's producing loss of energy. We end up exhausted. And we can recover relatively quickly. With burnout, it's helplessness. And there is hopelessness. And there is despair. And you talk to a person and you engage them, but despair is still there. There is a profound lack of motivation and ideals or any even meeting, and this is very dangerous. And that happens a lot. That happens especially at work these days. It's like a pandemic. Then general anxiety is typical for stress, and primary damage is physical. It can be high blood pressure, heart, and I'm not a medical doctor, but that's very, those are the symptoms and may cause that. And that it's actually, unfortunately, quite often that it happens. While with burnout, it's almost like beyond that line, that it's complete depression. And the person is longing, that's the paradox of depression I spoke last time, person is longing to connect, but they can't. The primary damage is emotional. And there is no meaning, or there is no seeing a view of life that is worth of living, which is really what happens in many workplaces, really. So next slide. So now, I don't know if I'm going too quickly, but we were late, so I'm going to push us to the domain of resilience, introduce us to resilience. What is it? It's our ability to withstand or recover quickly from different conditions, different stressors, back in shape, I just need to proper sleep and food and few days of rest and I'm back to normal or to equilibrium. And elasticity of our mind and body. And it's also what Lama Alan says, closely related to one's degree of mental balance. Really, if we are balancing our mind, if we are looking after our mind, if we are training our mind daily, weekly, and the degree of meaning is one life. Because sometimes life can be very tough. It can be exceptionally difficult and challenging. But if there is a meaning that is inseparable from what we do, if there is a pure heart and intention inseparably from what we do, then we can endure inconceivable efforts. So I'll talk a little bit about research that has been conducted, that I conducted with my colleague in the last 10 years, and just a little bit of findings that I'm not saying that these are the only findings, But actually, I didn't do research on resilience. I was starting with my desire to understand trauma, and the resilience was one of the findings. And so just a few things around that resilience is not something that we are necessarily born with. Of course, again, the predispositions and the way how we came out to this world and how we develop ourselves and grow up, attachment as well, as a healthy developmental attachment in childhood. But it's something that is really that we are learning along the way. It's like developing courage, developing intelligence. We thought that intelligence is something that we develop until the certain age, but now in the last 30 years or so, we know that intelligence is ever evolving, and of course there are different types of intelligence as there are different types of resilience. But what is crucial for resilience is that it's interactive process, that we talk to people, we relate to people, we develop sense of affection and even belonging. So this is crucial that I found in the studies across the globe. Really, it's done in Australia, but also in Europe, and people who are from Europe living in Australia. And it's about how we manage disruptions and how flexible we are, so-called psychological flexibility. What does that mean? How big is the space of our mind, our tolerance level, and how much we can take, how much we can see and observe from other person and process in a way that it's actually coping strategy rather than reaction. And then openness to experiences. And that's tough when people are wounded, when people are betrayed, when people are mistreated, when people are hurt or perceived that way or experienced. It's very difficult to be open. It's almost like a decision that I am approaching something with trust, not the illusion or, as I say, being in a la la land, but to really be open, present, and observing and cherishing their interdependence with others, where every resilient adult has one person to rely on. And then there is something absolutely crucial that was discovered, that you cannot recover as a child from any atrocity of trauma or abuse if you don't have one adult. Doesn't matter who it is. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe finally somebody, you find your foster parents at home. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's a teacher. Teachers have an enormous role. But somebody who really you can rely on as a child and you feel unconditionally loved, like no matter what you do, you are loved. And that is the ultimate realm of recovery and resilience. And in that domain of unconditional love and acceptance, children are developing, and people, adults, of course, emotional intelligence and self-regulation. Child cannot learn self-regulation if it's not loved. So training in emotional intelligence and self-regulation really increases resilience. And these are the findings in 2016 that we find among first and graduate students of mental health and addiction, which is a very like a risk-taking, demanding job. And we monitor that before and after, 6 months later and a year later of the training. And we found that people who really attended this training, that they have a capacity for self-awareness much more than their colleagues who didn't attend the training, self-monitoring. They were more joyful and joviality and self-assurance. They were able to calm their mind, to be serene, more adaptive, and they were able to communicate, to express their feelings, how they feel at work, etc. And then another finding is that, if you go on the second slide, Courtney, there are three very, very important factors. That compassion increases psychological resilience. If you really want to be resilient, strong, effective, open-hearted, practice compassion. And then you cannot practice compassion if you don't practice understanding, if you don't cultivate understanding. So what is understanding? It is so important when you understand someone, then that's the only way to forgiveness. And I'm quite strong about this. I actually claim this responsibly, that one cannot forgive if they don't understand. Like how? Because it's an intentional and deliberate decision to engage in a process of releasing or letting go of resentment, pain, of hurt, trauma. So, and it's not easy to understand, especially if you are afflicted by this person harm. And I'll talk about this later on a little bit. And also, this understanding gives us choice, gives us space of the mind, gives us space of the heart, if you wish, to make a choice, to choose between, because we always have, no matter how painful it is, we always have choice. Sometimes we can't do it because we're too wounded, overreactive, troubled, but the choice is there. And it's people that I interviewed 50 people, and 50% of those 50 people were tortured. But the people who choose not to hate, they made a decision, I'm not going to hate anybody. They recovered. They recovered gradually, some of them quickly, some of them less quickly, but they were in recovery because they made this decision to evaluate the experience, to develop understanding, and to have that stand, that view in relation to immorality and annihilation, or whatever they witnessed and experienced, that they served as the most powerful coping mechanism for them, their own values, decreasing the emotional turmoil, decreasing, when you survive and other family members or your community and friends don't survive, what we do have is survival's guilt. And you can't help it. But then to have this understanding and choice, it's actually, let alone practicing, observing the mind, which is, when you come traumatized, very difficult. But this is the cure. And coming in terms with the grief. So the survivors that I interviewed were not able to stay or reclaim their ethics and values, who were compromised, rather internally, but that you gave up on everything that was sacred to you because you couldn't take it anymore. And that happens it doesn't have to be war. It can happen in corporate world. If you have 3 children and mortgages, and you come to the point where you're compromising your values, that is very difficult. But there is also a way out. So effectively, people who compromised and didn't want to revisit that, so didn't want to go and develop understanding about this, they didn't recover. They were literally entrapped in their memories, and I call them besieged selves. They were really their own prisoners. So that's about the research. And now I'm going to introduce boundaries, which a lot of people, I was inspired to do that, and I apologize if I'm disappointing somebody, but in my practice for many, many years, with the beautiful, beautiful people, and in academic world and in research, I found that people have a misunderstanding or not enough awareness around boundaries. And I see boundaries as bridges that are connecting us, that are actually not creating separateness at all. They're developing, maintaining balance within interdependence, of interaction, where we communicate what we really need and we ask what other person needs. So I define personal boundaries as internal and external guidelines, not limits. A lot of definitions of boundaries are on limits, what are the limits, and we can't do it. For me, the boundaries are guidelines and rules. So these are my guidelines. This is really that I wish to cultivate for myself when interacting with others, and it takes integrity and also harmony and stability. This is what really is like a garden of cultivation of the rules and guidelines that are internal and external. Of course, internal are psychological and they have values and insights and emotions. And internals can be interaction, relationships, experiences that we have and we cultivate as we go, and environment. Because the environment is very important in terms of surrounding. It can be rules at work, but it can also be that it's water is polluted and air is polluted and flooding is coming. So it looks like we kind of cross some boundaries. And then professional boundaries, they're different, but also closely connected. As we all know, ethical, legal, organizational guidelines and frameworks that help to maintain safe and effective professional relationship, that we are not compromising safety and ethics in any way. And some professions are very strict and rigid, if you wish, rightly so, like medical profession. And then also personal and professional boundaries together have a crucial impact on our mental health. I don't think that we know enough how big this is. And I'm not trying to be knowledgeable here. I just think that we don't spend enough time with all our resources and wisdom and knowledge to check in weekly. Like on a Sunday morning before you have your coffee, you can have your practice, but then after practice, literally checking in where I am at and people around me. Have I pushed somebody else's boundaries? If so, why? That's really important for our well-being. Can we talk about this? Or are we just going to put under the carpet and pretend? And there is more to it. There are different types of boundaries. What I've learned from friends and colleagues and my teachers in psychology and different areas, that quite often boundaries are perceived like these big walls and bridges and towers and Great Wall of China. I don't want to know about it. You don't get there. And sometimes has to be that way. Sometimes has to be. But there are different types of boundaries, and some of them are physical, that people are not comfortable, for example, if you are in great proximity with them. But if you don't communicate that, it can be very damaging. So you can say, please don't come too close because I don't feel comfortable. Or you can say, this is not okay. So stating a problem is not a boundary. It can be an accusation. It can be perceived like diminishing somebody or accusing me. And then mental boundary and also spiritual boundary. There are things that are sacred to me that nobody knows. I don't have to impose that, but how am I going to cultivate that and feel safe? And then emotional boundary, I'll talk about that a little bit more. Material can be financial, it can be anything else. A lot of time, it's a huge boundary. I'm a ever, ongoing student of time boundaries and many others. Yeah, so there are just few and there are many, but I'm going to open this up now for a little bit more. This is an emotional boundaries slide I like to talk about. Because we don't understand when we feel resentment, we don't understand when we start to feel angry. And it's even like that we say, what's wrong with me? What's happening? I cannot emphasize enough how important this is to enable ourselves and others to express our needs without worrying. And the reason why people are not doing it because it's not easy. For the very reasons that I mentioned before. So if I have a partner or a friend or a boss or a manager or I don't know, doesn't matter, a teacher or who I cannot communicate. And yes, we can say, wait a minute, all these people are not responsible for our emotions. And that's exactly right. We are responsible for our emotions. So it's not anybody's fault, but we have to take responsibility for our own emotions and how we say no. It's not easy to say no. That is without fear that I'm going to be abandoned or I'm going to be disliked, I'm going to be hurt, and I'm going to be attacked. And sometimes that happens. It happens more often than we actually want to see. And what is important here to know, am I willing to do this? And when you say no, and this is really important, it's not just one person saying no and another person is on receiving them. Do I know why I'm saying no? What is my rationale in terms of consistency, values, and worldview? There is a line, or maybe it's required professional, or maybe it's not. Am I in peace with that? And then if person is attacking me, how did I communicate that? And I like that example of speeding. You know, when you have 2-3 people in a car and somebody is really speeding. So instead of, I don't know, 40, 50 miles per hour, they're going 110. So instead of saying, what do we usually do? We start saying, what are you doing? And please don't do that. Or even different wording, which I'm not going to use. So we are not using I statement. We are projecting to this person our fear, accusing them, screaming, and they're demanding, slow down. What kind of behavior is this? But sometimes this is very kind of simplified example. Sometimes we just need to use I statement and say, I'm really afraid. I'm really afraid and I'm freaking out. And if you can please slow down. And we can talk later on then about this other person. So if this person is ignoring you, then they are not maybe able to respond to your emotions. Maybe they're not including you, considering your emotions. That's a different story, and I'm happy to talk about it. But how important is say, I feel afraid. And we don't do that. We say, what are you doing? And it's a different communication. It's not a boundary. And then this poorly defined boundary or weak boundaries can lead to various mental health issues because you put up with something for so long and you're not able to communicate. It has a toll on you. It can be social, physical, emotional, any other toll. Thank you, God. Nina Brown, eminent American therapist, school counselor, therapist, and teacher, who wrote a few books on children with narcissistic parents who were confused, when your mother gave you life and birth, but when you grow up, you also learn that she's envy of you, or, very, 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 very troublesome upbringing. She came out to this work in teaching and work on trauma. She came out with this boundary classification that are exceptionally useful and are well applied in work in psychology and research, and especially in work on personality disorders and all these troubles with people who really have problems, severe problems in upbringing. So she talks about soft, spongy, rigid, and flexible boundaries. That's how she named them. The soft ones are actually that almost we don't have boundaries, or we do, but we don't have any resistance when somebody's violating them, or we have no protection for our values in that sense. Merging with other people's boundaries, sacrificing our personal needs, and easily these people are very easily manipulated. They are very easily, unfortunately, subject to abuse, especially, it starts in teenage years, because they will not encourage children to develop those boundaries, or maybe learn spontaneously in a healthy family interaction. That spongy elements are both soft and rigid boundaries. And that means that sometimes we are very harsh and we are very rigid and we are not even predictable. And then next day or a month down the track, for the same issue, we just kind of pretending it doesn't exist. So this is very inconsistent. It's almost like a yo-yo, between two extremes. What I forgot about soft boundaries and going back, what is crucial there is also, please be aware of cultural background. Because, for example, I talked about that recently somewhere else, South European Mediterranean cultures. There is nothing about individuality. The family as a unit is the most important thing. So every single need is communicated towards that goal. While maybe North America or England or Australia is different, Latin America different. So the culture is very important. And we will come down to that in inclusiveness with flexible one. So with this, one day I'm very soft and kind because you, I don't know, ask me something, and then 15 days later, I'm asking you the same thing, and you're jumping out the chair, saying, this is not on. I don't want to talk about it. So that's really, but there are many situations like that. Rigid boundaries are basically, these are the rules. There is no negotiation. And a lot of patriarchal culture has that historically. And it was almost socially acceptable to be rigid in certain situations, which is very damaging, really. It's really damaging because to be firm and to be kind, we are going to flexible boundaries. And that is the most healthiest, most adaptive way to be in the world, discerning, distinguishing what to let in and what to keep out. Because if we are confused about that, then we need to talk about it. We need to clarify, because there are a lot of things that we don't know. And then, if we have this flexibility, then we are not easily manipulated. And it's very difficult to exploit anybody who is very open-minded, confident, with the space of the mind to be flexible. Okay, this is what I really can talk about, and this is what is really hurting me, how we can find a solution, or this is what this company or this business requires. And, internally, how does this fit with me? Where I am at in all this story? How can I contribute? That's the question. So rather than looking into relationships as a product and what I can get and how I can reassure this and that, it's this inclusiveness and really collaboration. So thank you so much, Courtney, for your patience. I developed this table to talk about soft and flexible boundaries. I also call these soft boundaries people pleasing. And my friends and my clients, they know a lot about this because I shared this, and somebody, my friend, recently when I'm preparing this, reminded me of this. And what is the difference between people pleasing and authentic kindness? So this is also very simplified, but I hope that it's very helpful. And what I'm trying to introduce here is the flexible boundaries. And authentic kindness is also loving kindness. It's your spiritual practice. It's a practice of your mind. It's your faith if you have one. And it's also pleasing people is actually false facsimile of loving kindness. It's false facsimile of authentic kindness. What we also need here with authentic kindness is something that I'm not going to talk about much because Brené Brown, famous and loving Brené Brown, she talks about vulnerability. But to be authentically kind, you have to be open to experience. And that openness requires vulnerability. That you are not perfect, that you can be told to correct yourself, that you can be told that you came across in this conversation in this way. You need to be open. So pleasing people is saying yes. And then very, very quickly after that, people feel regret. And what happens later on, it's even worse. It's really resentment is happening. And that is really dangerous. And we don't know why it's this. It's because we said yes to something that we don't have time for, etc. Or the option is to be authentic and say no for one limit or needing a break. And we need to know, because some people said to me, how can you say yes? But I know I can. And I know that it's okay. Going back to understanding, going back to the meaning, that's very important. And my yes doesn't mean yes for everybody else, and vice versa. Keeping feelings and needs for, I don't want to talk about my feelings because people are ashamed, they have stigma, they're fearful. How, if I tell you what am I suffering from, you won't like me anymore. This is the fear. They're letting someone know what's being hurtful across the boundary. Harmful behavior. How many, I will say now, I'm not partners, but also really they're talking about domestic violence, women. How many women put up with harmful behavior? How many partners the same-sex marriages put with harmful behavior, not to lose someone that, we're talking about lose and love, which is basically attachment and fear and traumatic wound and many things. I'm not trying to put everything in one sentence, but this is really important. And refusing, I sometimes say, I'm not going to enable this person to do this to me because they are accumulating negative karma. They are creating habits, if you wish. If you are not, you don't have to be Buddhist. You're developing habits because you're learning that bullying is okay. You're learning that being, inappropriate, and if you're tough enough and persistent enough, that you're going to get away with it. So, that's not, why would I allow you to do that? Maybe if I'm afraid and I have no support, and if I have no understanding what's going on, etc. Sometimes we deny our own reality. And there is a famous sentence in my life that many of people know. It's, can I check my reality with you? I love that sentence because it's so good. It's so genuine. And then I have to be prepared to receive an answer. And maybe somebody's going to say, listen, this is really not okay. Feeling to need, there is a need to fix. Once I was giving a training to people who worked with the asylum seekers, no refugees, but people who came by boat to Australia. They were set into beautiful community houses, young people, majority of young people. The education was organized. They would go to school to learn English, come back. They had 3 meals, shelter. And I conducted this training talking to workers. And what came out is that they tried to fix them. They tried to fix them. They tried to help them to be happy. And I said, wait a minute. These people are waiting for the papers. They don't know if they're going to be returned back. They don't even know where, like to Iran, Iraq, that doesn't matter which country, where they came from, Africa, any country in Africa they came from. And you are trying to, like, how we are going to fix them? Can we sit with them? Can we listen to them? Can we sit with them when they're trembling in fear? And have a quality of attending with open heart without fixing anything, because that's the enormous help. Having time for them, bearing witness and trusting, making decision that I'm trusting, not to be, naive or be subject of, but I'm making decision, I'm trusting you, and I'm here with you. And that's the enormous help and enormous flexible boundaries for everyone. I talked about boundaries a lot with my friends. And my dear friend Sita Tara, who lives and works here in a beautiful Center for Contemplative Research. We talked the other day, and I asked, respecting boundaries, I asked permission if I can quote, and she gave me this permission. So she said, Anita, with this boundaries business that you're talking about, we don't just set boundaries like, okay, this is my boundary and that's it. We set it. It's not like set it and forget it, but we rather set it and reset it, and again reset it. So it's an ongoing process, and she came so beautifully with this. So I took a photo of this flower, and I was compelled to quote this, sharing with all of you. Thank you. So what are the benefits? What are the benefits when we have healthy boundaries? It's to enhance resilience that we talked about before. So that flexibility about bouncing back, recovering quickly, even in the most challenging circumstances. It is also enhancing self-care, because we talked last 4 weeks ago about self-care and self-awareness. It's very difficult to look after oneself and to practice self-awareness and awareness of people around us, because that also includes dignity, if we don't have healthy boundaries. Then consistency is very important, and providing consistency, understanding, and respecting one's needs. And it really definitely improves relationship. It doesn't sound that way when we say boundaries, but that's the term. But it does create inclusiveness, dialogue, and honesty, and space for flexibility. So the next one. So how to do this? How to embrace balance, and how to cultivate these healthy boundaries? So I put word connection or volition, motivation, desire, aspiration, whatever we want to say, but it's our intention for one's boundaries. So, for example, if I'm avoiding people, why is that? Is that because I have COVID? So I want everybody else to be safe? Or there are things that, or conversations or situations that I'm avoiding. The first thing is to know why. And that's the starting point for everything, that our intention is never to create divisiveness. So if I see that I'm actually creating that, maybe I have some anxiety around certain events or certain situations. So then I'm opening the space to work on that. So this is the beginning and the end of all this balance in terms of why I need privacy in this way. You need to know, nobody else has to know, but you need to know. And that promotes greater unity for all, for the community, for the workplace, for the family, and then self-awareness, crucial. What are my needs? Am I aware of my needs? Maybe I do have allergy. I know about food. I do know my sleeping pattern, like I'm not a morning person, maybe I'm evening. Those are all needs, but also emotional and any other spiritual, financial. What does that mean? Clear communication, expressing one boundaries, how we learn this. I don't know, generationally, I have some concerns that we were not learned to communicate our boundaries. Do we do this clearly? Are we gentle about it? Or we are confident? Can we be confident, firm, and kind at the same time? There is something very powerful about consistency. And speaking from personal experience and professional, that when you are consistent and good intentional, and even if you don't know exactly how to communicate properly, and things are not always well, but at the end, it's like a pattern that it's coming out, that you are consistent and that there is no advancing between extremes, then maintaining those boundaries that we can face with challenges. We are enforcing our strength, consistency in understanding, and that is a fertile ground for respect. Very important. And really crucial to seek professional assistance. So why is self-awareness important? If I have anxiety and I'm managing well, but this anxiety is starting to isolate me from other people, or I'm avoiding to travel or to cross the road in the middle of the traffic, and this is becoming a problem. Then this monitoring is then okay. I have this problem. I wouldn't say this is a boundary. Maybe it's an obstacle or a challenge. Thank you. Okay, and then how to do this? We know all of that already, but it's important to share together. Mindfulness and introspection, practicing a little bit of mindfulness and then checking in with your introspecting, also reflecting but more intro, because that is also kind of gives you a space for ethics. It can develop harmony. And this is all virtues are here. Generosity, patience, compassion. It's all cultivated by mindfulness and introspection. And you can also, with those two, learn if you practice, I crossed this person boundary. They told me, or these are but I wasn't even aware. And then you come back, you can apologize if it's appropriate, or you can just have that in mind, and next time you're aware. So this is the method. There is nothing mysterious about it. But if we don't pause and calm our mind and practice, we can't do it. We are not aware. We're just running from one thing to the other, completely unaware how many people we may be irritated, hurt. And yet, you see the dance. We are not responsible for other people's emotions. What does that mean? You told me these are the rules. And by coincidence, completely unaware, I broke this rule. I hurt you. Maybe I betrayed you. I come back and I apologize, or I try to correct my behavior and I'm genuine. But maybe I'm not trusted anymore, or maybe this person is not able to receive. I'm not responsible for this person's reaction further down of how they feel, because they need to practice and regulate themselves. But I'm responsible for those things that I did. and that I'm accountable for. It's not about guilt. It's about, okay, what can I learn from it? How can I adjust it? I think this is our way forward in our resilience and mental health. And then compassion comes from that. That it's another person needs, so I'm attending myself with compassion. I forgive myself, which means I'm not developing resentment for my mistakes. And I'm also including this person that we are both well, that we are both. So it's this really delicate, beautiful dance. And then that is within interdependence and impartiality, recognizing the interconnectedness of individual well-being and also well-being of others. So, if I see also somebody that I'm feeling hurt, I can also think about when was the time. Oh, I can understand this. I remember when I was like that or similar to this. I'm not justifying, I'm not approving it, but I am resonating, I am understanding. That's really impartiality in good, in virtue, and in struggle, and non-attachment, which is of course big training for our lifetimes. Letting go, and letting go, excessive clinging, and it's hard when things are difficult. It's hard, but it's necessary. Don't identify with everything, and we sometimes do with a lot of things. Releasing guilt or fear, practicing how to let go of fear, and how to, especially other reactions. And when we're setting boundaries, like I know many people crying in the therapy room during the session. I know I have to do this, but I'm afraid. A lot of mothers do that. You wouldn't believe. A lot of mothers are afraid to put boundary to their adult children because they're afraid that the children are just going to walk away. But anyway, we can practice. So learning from our teachers, from Lama Alan Wallace, he emphasizes these really important points about cultivating resilience. And this, of course, it starts with cultivating a virtuous mind. And one of the way that I put here that Lama Alan uses in his practice, in his teaching, and in communication with his students, and it's a precious dharma from Lera Blinkpa, who is a great Dzogchen master in the 19th century. So I'm just going to read one short passage for how we cultivate virtuous mind. It's let the heart of your practice be consciousness. Naturally, at rest, lucid and clear. Acting as your own mentor, if you can bring the essential points to perfection, as if you were threading a needle. The autonomy of not succumbing to them, and your mind will constantly be calm and composed. And cultivating virtuous heart. And those are, of course, we know loving kindness, equanimity, and compassion, and empathetic joy, but this balancing. So when we are practicing and we notice, this practice of consciousness, of monitoring, you are your own mentor. Allow yourself, because we also go into self-denial. We don't want to allow ourselves to see our own things. It's painful because we learn that only if we deserve love and we don't make mistakes, I'm just giving an example, then we can be loved and safe. So then if you learn that you're not safe when you're making a mistake, you can be punished, then you are going to not be willing to observe your mind and notice your mistake. You're going to survive this by bypassing. You are not going to know. because it's too painful and it's scary. Your nervous system is responding, even that your intellect is telling you that that doesn't make any sense. So then try to practice this and just see I'm self-centered here. Wow, this is all about me. It's all about my fear. And then, cultivate that impartiality. And a lot of us know this much better than I do. I'm just emphasizing from psychological point of view and Dharma practice, how it's important to allow ourselves to things to come up, to dawn on us, to be safe and to remedy this balancing with empathetic joy when we are despaired. I say this very openly when I came to Australia, survived war, I needed to learn to win the peace. And I remember going to work in the morning, driving the car and stopped at the red light. And I would fake initially. And I was aware that I'm faking. And I would say, I'm grateful for this. And I didn't feel actually, because it was so challenging. It was so fearful. It was so everything unknown. But I was doing it and doing it and doing it until all the walls of fears were broken, that I could feel love for the person next to me waiting in the lane and wishing them well from the depth of my heart, instead of projecting fear, and would go barefooted crossing the grass because there were no minefields, and just enjoying the freedom and knowing what to do with that freedom rather than being overwhelmed with it. So those are extremes examples, but they are much cultivating understanding. Thank you for emphasizing this. Understanding the law of physical that enhances the physical well-being. Understanding the mental world enhances the psychological well-being. Understanding that, we all connected, that nothing is alien. Nothing is alien. Your behavior is not alien to me. That I don't have to approve your behavior. I don't even have to relate. But I do have an attempt to understand, because understanding is first step for everything. I can understand how alienated we are, how separate we are, how different we are. But that is going to enable that space, that flexibility, rather than, ooh, I don't want to know about these guys over there. It's very dangerous, as we know. But most of all, and primarily, to understand ourselves and our relationship with the world, the basis for spiritual well-being. So, self-knowledge, please, Socrates. He said that I'm still unable, as the Delphic inscription of orders, to know myself. And it really seems to me ridiculous to look into other things before I have understood that. And before we go into Ghatika, I would like to read the prayer of our teacher. Let's just take a breath. May all beings be endowed with happiness and its causes. May all beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all beings never be parted from genuine well-being, free of dissatisfaction. May all beings dwell in partiality, free of attachment, hostility for those near and far. Thank you so much. So now, if you can and if you wish to sit comfortably or take comfortable position, Be gentle and kind. Let's start. So it's an expression of loving kindness for ourselves. After all these many words, we may be feeling it's not at ease at all. So let's position our body, our mind in a natural state. Just rest. Let's rest in the stream of our awareness. Let's go back to our equilibrium. Gentle, calm, clear. Relaxed. And now gently let's go to the center of our mandala, center of our heart. And let's embrace joy. Let's find a place of joy. By visiting your virtues. Let's embrace our own qualities, our own virtues. Please recall them, attend to them. Attend them so closely. Enjoy in attending your qualities, your strength. See yourself with virtues. And now gently, gently, whoever comes to the space of your mind, any friend, any person, a stranger, see them through their virtues, see the qualities of this person and their behavior, the way they look at you, the way they are. Expand your heart, expand your mind, and see them in their virtues, in their beauty. Whoever comes, see them in their strength, together with your strength, together with your virtue. Embrace your generosity, your patience, all your qualities, with all your friends' qualities, with all the communities with their qualities, with all people around the world. Choose to see the qualities and virtues. Embrace. And from your heart, if you wish, visualize a pearl, speck of light coming, embracing, attending virtues, equally yours and others. Spread your light, unity, reverence for virtues. Open your heart. with attention, admiration, with joy. Embrace all the virtues of yourself and others. And embrace loving kindness of all sentient beings. With loving kindness and love, we can develop virtue. We can cultivate virtues. So embrace it. Be aware of it. Admire it. Love it. Open your heart. And whoever comes to space to your mind, wish them well. May they be free of suffering, its causes. May they find genuine happiness. May they all be happy, genuinely happy. And now, rest, release everything and rest in this precious divine stream of your awareness. Allow yourself to rest in this stream of unconditional love. This fabric of universe, stream of your consciousness, love, unconditional. Rest there. Let's now gently bring this session to a close. Okay, everyone. Maybe just before we go to questions and answers, just for a moment, just dedicate this merit today, all of us together in unity, in love, in understanding. Make your personal dedication. Thank you. So thank you one more time, and be well and stay open-hearted, and thank you for your compassion and patience. Thank you. Thank you all.